But of course, still talking about the Africa CEO Forum ongoing in Kigali, the Rwandan capital. The chairman and CEO of BRA Group was one of the speakers at the panel yesterday looking at how to fast-track the new Africa Continental Free Trade Zone. That's the AfCFTA. But why Nigeria is still yet to sign that as other countries putting it together? What are some of the fault lines and the benefits of signing in? This is what Channels Television business producer and anchor Chimeze Obiwago had this conversation with Abdul Rabiu, who is the chairman and CEO of BRA Group in Kigali yesterday. Take a listen.
Integration, regional integration, CFTA, which is the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which, as you know, almost 49 countries have signed out of the 55 countries in Africa. It has not been ratified yet, but Nigeria has not signed. And one of the things that we discussed is that why is it that Nigeria has not signed?
And are you concerned that Nigeria has not signed it?
I'm concerned in a way, but I am also, as I said at the session, I'm very confident, that at the end of the day, if, we are able to get everything sorted, the issues that we have, on this CFTA, I'm sure Nigeria will sign, because there are huge benefits, for everybody in Africa, not only, regionally, but, continentally. If you look at the benefits, from agriculture to food production, to mining, to manufacturing, to IT, financial services, there's so much, there is so much that we can do, if we are able to integrate. However, the structure as it is right now does not favor Nigeria. That is the truth. It doesn't favor some countries, and especially Nigeria, because of our huge, population, because of the fact that we are highly dependent on imports. So these issues are very important, because we don't want a situation where we would allow a borderless continent, where smaller countries will be importing almost everything that we consume in Nigeria from other continents, from other countries, like China and what have you, and then dump it into their countries and then bringing them into Nigeria in the name of CFTA. That we will never allow. Nigeria should never allow that, okay? So those are some of the issues. That is number one, dumping. And if you allow that, we will not have any control. Benin Republic could import 3 or 5 million tons of rice, dump it into Benin Republic and bring it to Nigeria in the name of, free trade agreement. And that is going to ruin the entire agri, sector in Nigeria. That is number one. Number two, even the regional agreement that we have, the regional treaty, which is the ETLS, Economic Community of West African States Trade Liberalization Scheme, that has been signed many, many years ago. It is not working. It is not being respected by other countries within the region. There are 15 countries that are part of this ETLS. Benin Republic is part of it. Burkina Faso is part of it. But they are not respecting these treaties. I, as a Nigerian, and I have, factories, that are producing cement that I could go and sell, in Benin Republic, but I'm not allowed. You cannot go and sell cement, for example, in Benin Republic from Nigeria. It is not allowed. Yet, there is a treaty in place. It has been agreed, it has been signed, but it's not being respected. So these are the lessons that we have learned from the previous arrangement. So because of that, we are also concerned that if we are not, or countries are not respecting this smaller agreement, how are we sure that they will respect, the bigger one, which is the CFTA? So there are questions, and we need to answer those questions. So Nigeria, I think, is right in ensuring that, most of their concerns are actually addressed before they commit to this agreement. However, I must add that the benefits are immense, they are good, and we should participate. It's just that we need to address these concerns, because if you look at it continentally, if you are able to have CFTA, there will be quite a lot of easy movement of people, without having to obtain a visa or what have you, to enter some of these countries. As it has been reported, less than 25% of Africans can actually travel to other parts of Africa. It is our record. So if we're able to have CFTA, it's going to help, the ease of movement of people and what have you, and it will benefit everybody. But then again, if it is going to be detrimental to our economy, then of course, you have to really look at it carefully to ensure that by going into this agreement, we are not jeopardizing so many other things at home.
Now, considering these concerns you have raised, are there discussions between the government of Nigeria, the private sector, and of course the other countries that have signed this agreement?
President Muhammadu Buhari has set up a committee to actually look into this and to make recommendations. And Manufacturers Association is part of that committee, and I'm a member of that committee, so I know what is going on. I know we are discussing, and hopefully if these issues are addressed, and we know that, look, if we have a treaty, the treaty will be respected. Of course, why not? The benefits are there. We would want to have a situation where whatever we produce in Nigeria, we would be able to sell in other parts of, other parts of the continent, because we are producing more. But we are the biggest economy. We are the most populous country, on the continent, 200 million people. So if we allow this thing, everybody will just come and dump everything in Nigeria. And before you know it, it's going to be a disaster for us.
Part of this forum is to bring private participation into economic integration. What do you think the private sector can bring to the table in achieving this?
It's exactly the thing that we've been saying. Because in most cases, these decision makers, policy makers, government officials, they do most of these things without engaging with the private sector. The private sector does not know what is going on. In most cases, they will, come up with a policy and then just dump it on us. So there is need for an engagement between the governments and the private sector, especially in terms of, these kind of things. More so because if you look at what is happening in infrastructure, there is nothing. It costs 200% more. 200% more to transport goods within Africa than in other regions. 200%. That is number one. Number two, we cannot move around. Sometimes there are some countries that actually, for it to go from, say, Nigeria to, okay, Togo is better now, but maybe to Burkina Faso, for example, you'd need to go to, maybe 3, 4, 5 countries. This is just a 1 hour flight time, So these are the issues that we need to address. And before we can do that, we need to engage with the private sector. Look at the Trans-African Highway, which was envisioned, in the 70s, in 1971. That project was agreed, was signed. Up to today, almost 50 years, 48 years, nothing has happened. And this is a very important project, because if we are able to achieve that, we'll be able to link, the entire continent, from West Africa to East Africa. If you look at the Mombasa or Lagos-Mombasa highway, which is Highway 8, it's from Lagos to Cameroon, cuts across through to Cameroon, Central African Republic, DRC, Uganda, Kenya, or Uganda, Mombasa. So if you're able to have that, you'll be able to transport your goods and services and people by road from Lagos all the way to Mombasa. How are you going to do that if you do not engage with the private sector? The DFIs alone cannot do it. The governments will not be able to do it. They have been on it for almost 50 years. Nothing has happened. And we don't have to do all the highways. We can start with Lagos, Mombasa, as I said, or Cape Town to Cairo, or Tripoli, Cape Town, or Dakar, Lagos. There are 9 highways of almost 50,000 kilometers. We can start with some of them, at least link some of these, our regions, West Africa to East Africa, North Africa, South Africa, all of those things. But without the private sector, we can never achieve it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you get the private sector, they can be involved. They can maybe invite some of the biggest construction companies in Africa, some of the biggest cement manufacturers in Africa, some of the biggest steel manufacturers in Africa, come together and say, guys, look, we need to do this. And this is what it entails. This is how much it costs. How can you help us so that we can partner together and develop our continent? I don't see anybody that would say no to this. But it is not happening. So I would want a situation where, governments and, the leaders of this continent engaging more with the private sector in terms of, developing and, building this continent, because the governments alone cannot do it.
Rabiu, the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Boa Group, speaking with Channels Television, Chimezobi Ouagu there in Kigali, Rwanda. Of course, the two-day conference continues and ends later today. We have a lot more on that coverage for you today and for the rest of the week. Quite a lot to put into the program for today. When we come back after the break, we're taking a look at the commodities market update. Brexit is unpacking in the UK. It looks like a burning train, but it will have consequences for Nigeria with strong economic trade and commerce ties with Britain. Part of that is what we're looking at. We'll come back in about 2 minutes. Stick around, everyone. This is your Business Morning